What's up, guys? It's Crazy Radiate here. And have you ever wanted to make a Magic the Gathering deck to where you didn't have to go to combat? I know combat can be kind of tricky at times, especially when you're playing with, there's 4 people at the table, and you're trying to figure out what creatures do you need to use to attack, what creatures do you need to keep back for blocking, and it can be sometimes difficult if you don't have the right amount of creatures, the right creatures, and if they don't have the right strength and abilities. It's a lot of thinking. Well, what if I told you there's a way to where you don't have to go to combat and you can still win the game? Yeah, that's right, it's possible. And it's possible through a mechanic called ping damage, P-I-N-G, ping. Now, what ping damage is, that's where your opponents, in this case opponents, all of them, take 1 damage here, 1 damage there, and you can have multiple ping damages per turn. Now, you might be wondering, how is that possible? How can, considering, if you're playing Commander, you start at 40 life, you might have somebody who's playing a deck that gives them life gain. Well, here's the thing, with ping damage, you can chain those triggers together and have multiple ping damages per turn. I use this in 3 of my decks that I have. Two of those decks are nothing but ping damage, and I have won with those decks multiple times because there's different ways of getting the triggers off of ping damage, and there's also different ways of having multiple triggers off of it. And so it's a great mechanic. It's a mechanic that you don't think much about, and it took me a little bit to figure it out, but man, let me tell you, when I got it going, I love the ping damage ability on some of these cards. They're so good, and that's what I want to do. I want to take some time and go over some of the cards that I use, some of the cards that I recommend, some commanders you can use, and then kind of give you a little bit of a scenario of if you have certain cards out, what would happen in just 1 turn, and you might just be surprised at how much damage you can do in just 1 turn. So y'all stick around. It's gonna be fun. Now, as we get into the cards that work in a ping ability deck, there are a few cards that I think that everyone should have in any of their decks. It don't matter if they're doing a ping ability deck or if they're doing a +1/+1 deck, an enchantment deck, artifact deck. I just think these cards are really, really good cards, and they can actually save you a lot of trouble, especially if somebody wants to play something spicy on turn 2. Like an Esper Sentinel. Yeah, nobody likes that. Or later on when they play Rhystic Study. I'm one of those folks that play Rhystic Study, so I know what it can do. So yeah, these are just a few cards, 5 cards in total, that I think you should have in each of your decks. Alright, the first one is Braid. It is a mono red, and it's rather cheap to play. You pay 1 red plus 1. It's an instant. And you choose 1. A Braid deals 3 damage to target creature, or it destroys target artifact. This is a great card because you never know when someone's going to play something spicy that you need to deal with because it's going to affect your board. So it's a cheap instant, and I like that. The second one is Blasphemous Act. Now, Blasphemous Act, even though it looks like that it costs a lot, it really don't. It's a mono red sorcery. You pay 8 plus a red, but the good thing is that it costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, and then it deals 13 damage to each creature. Well, I mean, shoot, that right there, it takes care of the whole board. Now, if somebody's playing something that's got their creatures over 13 damage, well, if you got a way of copying this spell, well, then you're doing 26 damage. But you're playing someone who's got, creatures that's over 13 health, well, then you got bigger problems, don't you? And then you have Murder, a mono black card. It's a very simple card. It's a mono black instant. You pay 2 black plus 1, destroy target creature. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's just straight to the point. Destroy target creature. It don't matter what it is. Someone want to play something like Colossal Dreadmaw or something big like that. You can just take care of it real quick just by paying 3. Then you have Ice Out. Ice Out is a mono blue instant. You pay 1 plus 2 blue, and then you can pay its bargain cost if you want. You may sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast this spell, and this spell costs 1 less to cast if it's bargain, which is all well and good, or you can just pay the 3 mana and counter target spell. Yet again, this is one of those cards like for people like myself who like to play Ristic Study, or some of those folks that like playing things like Black Market Connection, or seeing certain things that gives them advantage. Well, you can counter that spell for a relatively cheaper cost. I mean, that's not bad. Then you have Austere Command. Now, Austere Command, yes, it's a little bit more expensive. However, the payoff is just, oh my gosh, you can't beat this payoff. It's a mono white sorcery. You pay 2 white plus 4. Choose 2. Destroy all artifacts. Destroy all enchantments. Destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less. Destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater. So, I mean, it's a win-win. You can either destroy all artifacts and enchantments or destroy all creatures. Or you can do a mixture. Destroy some of the creatures with all the artifacts, or some of the creatures with all the enchantments. So, I mean, good Lord, it's a little bit more to pay, but I mean, golly, the payoff. Man, that payoff is good. And then you have Takedown. Love Takedown. It's a mono green sorcery, and it just costs 1 green. 1 mana, that's it. And you choose one. Takedown deals 4 damage to target creature with flying, or Takedown deals 1 damage to each creature with flying. So if someone's playing a deck where they create 1/1 Thopters, well, if they got a whole bunch on the board, you play Takedown, you just destroyed all of them for 1 mana. I mean, golly. That's a heck of a payoff in my opinion. And these are just some cards that I keep in all my decks, or I try to, and they're really, really good cards. Real good cards. Now, when it comes to building a deck around ping damage, there are different ways that you can do it. You can use these individually, or like I like to put them kind of mixture in my decks because they work so good. And the first is being card draw. Now, card draw is a great way of creating ping damage. You can use things like Niv-Mizzet Parun. Niv-Mizzet Parun, and what he does is whenever you draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, and then you can use something like Niv-Mizzet the Fire Mine. That's the same thing, but except you tap him and you can draw a card, so you get 2 triggers off of that. And then you have something like Nekusar the Mind Razor. And then what that is whenever at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. That's all well and good. But whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to that player, which means on their turn, they're taking 2 ping damages from that. So card draw is a great mechanic to use on ping damage. Now the other one is tap abilities. Tap, yet again, like I said, with Niv-Mizzet the Fire Mine, you tap him to draw a card, and then he deals 1 damage. But there's other creatures that you can use, and some of them you can do multiple times. For instance, there's Panicked Altasar. Panicked Altasar is a really good one. You tap it and it deals 2 damage to each opponent. The only thing about it is it doesn't have an untap ability, so you're going to have something else in your deck that untaps him. Whereas if you have something like Thermal Alchemist, you tap him, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Or you have Unruly Catapult, and you tap it, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. But with both of these cards, whenever you play an instant or sorcery, you untap them. And when you untap them, you can tap them again, so you have multiple triggers off of these. Panicked Altasar, it is a good card, but you're going to have something like Kelpie Guide in there to be able to untap him. And but it deals 2 damage, and so I mean it's still a good card. Another one is ETB triggers, enter the battlefield triggers. Now, enter the battlefield triggers are also a really good way, and I love the ETB triggers. And one of my favorite cards to use is impact trimmers, especially if you're running a token deck. For instance, my Locust God deck is nothing but creating tokens. If you have impact trimmers in there, or if you use something like Krinko Mob Boss, you could deal a lot of ping damage in one turn. And so impact trimmers is whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. I mean, come on, good lord. And then you have something like Obira, I believe that's how you say it, Obira Dreaming Duelist. Now this is good if you're running a fairy deck, and whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life yet again. If you're running a token deck where you're creating fairies, well then you're dealing 1 damage there. And then one of my favorites, this is actually one of my commanders that I use, is Alice Ilcor Sadistic Pilgrim. This has 2 different abilities in it. It's whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That's also beneficial. And whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. I mean, good lord. I mean, come on. And how that works in multiple ways is like this, through the next ability, which is sacrifice abilities. And in a ping damage deck, if you can chain different ways of where they enter the battlefield, you get ping damage, or you can sacrifice creatures and then you also get ping damage. For instance, you have Denethor Ruling Steward. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, create a 1/1 white human creature token. Then you pay 2, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses 1 life. You gain 1 life. You pair that up with Alice Ilcor Sadistic Pilgrim. Creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. Creature dies, your opponents lose a life. I mean, you can really do a lot of chaining on that. And then you have Dinah Soul Steeper. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. You pair her up with Slimefoot the Stowaway, which is great. Whenever a sapperling you control dies, Slimefoot the Stowaway deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 1 life. Well, you sacrifice a sapperling, you gain a life off of Dinah Soul Steeper. When you gain that life, each opponent loses a life. So, I mean, you get so much from these different abilities, the card draw, tap abilities, ETB triggers, and sacrifice abilities. I mean, come on. It's so much that you can do. You can deal so much damage in 1 turn and don't even have to attack using these 4 abilities. Now, when it comes to building a commander deck around the ping damage, I want to give you 2 different scenarios, 2 different commanders you can use, and some cards you can use in them, and then also a scenario of how much damage you could deal in 1 turn. And please forgive me, I'm going to be looking at my other computer screen as I do this. The first one is the Locust God. I love the Locust God. It's my favorite commander that's ever been made. He is a little pricey to play. It's a blue-red +4, 6 mana. But whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. And then you pay blue-red +2, draw a card, discard a card, and when it dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. That's a great mechanic right there on its own. You can put it in the graveyard, return it to your hand the next end step. You don't have to pay for the commander tax. I love that. So you can have cards in it, for instance, Unruly Catapult, Thermal Alchemist, Panicked Altosaur. We just talked about those. Those are some really good cards you can have in this deck. And then you have other cards like Niv-Mizzet Pyroon, Niv-Mizzet the Fire Mine, which deals damage when you draw cards, and you're going to be drawing a lot of cards off of the Locust God. And then Impact Trimmers, dealing 1 damage when you create a creature to each opponent. I can't express how important it is that if you have a token deck and it has a red source in it, to have impact trimmers in there, because you're going to deal some damage. And then you can have other cards like these 2 enchantments. Barrage of Expendables. It's a cheap enchantment to play. You pay a red, sacrifice a creature, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And then there's Goblin Bombardment, where you just sacrifice a creature. You don't have to pay for it. You sacrifice a creature and it deals 1 damage to any target. Of course, you have Skull Clamp. Love Skull Clamp. It's only a 1 mana artifact. And the equipped creature gets +1/-1, and when the equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards. So that's a great card to have in a token deck. Mechanized Warfare. If a red or artifact source you control will deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage +1 instead. So if you're playing Unruly Catapult, you tap it, deals 1 damage. Because of Mechanized Warfare, it deals 2 damage because it's a red source. And then an Enchantment Room. I love that they come out with these. It is a little pricey, but it's worth it in the long run. You have Mirror Room, Fractured Realm, and Fractured Realm is the one that I use most on this, and it's not cheap. It's 2 blue +5. It's 7 mana, but the payoff. If a triggered ability of a permanent you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. You say, well, what's a triggered ability? Well, let's look at that. Niv Mizzet the Firemind, it says whenever you draw a card, he deals 1 damage to any target. That's a triggered ability. And so you get 2 triggers off of that. Impact Tremors, that's a triggered ability. Whenever a creature, if it says whenever, that's a triggered ability. Now let me give you a scenario of how much damage, let me get my pen, how much damage you can deal in just 1 turn. So let's say, for instance, Unruly Catapult, Mirror Room, Fractured Realm, with Fractured Realm being unlocked, Goblin Bombardment, and Niv Mizzet the Firemind are out. Okay? So, and you use Goblin Bombardment to sacrifice a creature. So this is what's always going to happen. First off, you're going to, when you draw for turn, Niv Mizzet the Firemind deals 1 damage because you drew a card. Because of Fractured Realm, it deals another damage, so then that's 2 damage right there. Alright? And then, after your draw step, you can tap Niv Mizzet the Firemind, draw a card. You got 1 damage there, plus an additional damage off of Fractured Realm. So then you've got 2 damage right there. You sacrifice a creature with Goblin Bombardment, so it deals 1 damage to any target. Now that is not a triggered ability, so it just deals 1 damage. Alright? And then you tap Unruly Catapult. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. Alright? So that's another damage. Let's say you play an instant and a sorcery. You untap Unruly Catapult and then you tap him again, so that deals another damage. So at this point, just this very simple turn, you've done 2, 4, 5, 6, you've dealt 7 damage in just 1 turn with Ping ability. 7 damage, and you could do more if you wanted to. I absolutely love. And I do that with the Locust God. I have those cards in my Locust God deck. And, I've sometimes won with just, through attacks. And I've also won through just ping abilities with the Locust God. Now, another commander you can use is Slimefoot the Stowaway. I love Slimefoot. Whenever a sapperling you control dies, Slimefoot the Stowaway deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain 4 life. And you could pay 4, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. There's other cards, however, you can use that create sapperlings. Like there's some cards, Thalid Death Spore, I believe that's the name of it, where you put a spore counter on it at your upkeep, and you can remove 3, you create a sapperling. There's like 4 of those that you can use. I have all 4 of them in my deck, and they're cheap. I mean, they're really cheap. So, some cards you can have in Slimefoot the Stowaway that are really good, because in this deck I do a lot of life gain, life drain, which is ping ability. It's Dyna Soul Steeper, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. That's a great card. Then you have Marauding Blight Priest. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Epicure of Blood. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses life. Moldervine Reclamation. I think I said that right. I may have just tore it up. Moldervine Reclamation. Whenever a creature you control dies, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. And then Sanguine Bond. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. And then there's other things for sacrifice abilities in this deck. You have Evolutionary Leap. You pay a green, sacrifice a creature. That's pretty good. Falcon Wrath Noble. Whenever Falcon Wrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. Golgari Rotworm. You pay a black, sacrifice a creature. Target player loses 1 life. Oh, that's 2 triggers right there. Novice Dissector. You pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Poison Tip Archer. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. And then Vampiric Rites. You can pay 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, you gain 1 life, you draw a card. Now obviously there's other cards you can use if you want to spend the extra money. I don't want to. I like going with this cheaper version. The most I've spent, the most I spend on cards, which I think one of them was on here, is about $8. And you could probably find it cheaper than that if you go through different sources. Now, here's a scenario. Let's say you have Slimefoot, the Stowaway out, you have Vampiric Rites out, Dinosaur Steeper out, and you have Epicure of Blood. Alright, and you use Vampiric Rites to sacrifice a Saproling. Alright, so this is what's going to happen. When you sacrifice the Saproling, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Alright, and then you gain 1 life from Slimefoot because you sacrificed it. Well, because you gained 1 life, you draw a card from Vampiric Rites, okay? You gain a life and draw a card from Vampiric Rites. Alright? It deals 2 damage to each opponent from the life gain on Epicure of Blood. And then it deals 2 damage to each opponent from the life gain on Dinosaur Steeper. So that's 5 damage right there from just from sacrificing 1 Saproling, because you gain a life. You gain 1 life from sacrificing that creature with Vampiric Rites. Because you gain that life, Dinosaur Steeper, Epicure of Blood, causes your opponents to lose a life. Well, because you sacrificed the creature, Slimefoot, well, it's a Saproling, Slimefoot the Stowaway goes, oh, well, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Then you gain another life. So, it might actually be more than 5, so let me calculate this up a little bit more. Alright, so you gain a life, and then 1, 2, well, that might be right. 2, 1, yeah, okay, so it's 5 damage that you deal in 1 turn right there off a Slimefoot. So the question is ping damage a good ability to create a deck around? By all means it is. You can just, don't have to go to combat at all. You don't have to go to combat at all. When I use Ellis Core Sadistic Pilgrim, there's been a couple times that I played it that I didn't go to combat one time. Didn't have to. Because the ping damage was enough to just reduce them down to nothing. And so, yeah, I highly suggest trying out the ping damage. See what you think about it. Work around it yourself. If you want to spend a little bit extra money on it, you can. You can make it better. There's stuff like Ashnod's Altar. But if you want to go a cheaper route, there's always cheaper cards you can use out there. I recommend, this is what I do a lot of times, I recommend going to Arcadeck, and which not sponsored. I recommend going to Arcadeck and looking up, say, Crinkle Mob Boss, and just look at different people's decks and see what they have in it, and see if you can find some cheap cards, or you can just Google search cards that work well with Slimefoot the Stowaway, and go from there. But yeah, ping damage is a great mechanic to work a deck around, and I highly recommend you trying it out. And if you do, let me know how it goes. I'm interested. I haven't seen too many people, which I don't get to play with a lot of people anymore. Our pod at our game store, we haven't played in a while. So yeah, let me know how it goes, what commander you use, and if you found even better ways than what I'm doing, which you could, yeah, let me know, because I'm interested. If you put it on Arcadeck, tell me what your name is on there, your tag, whatever, and I'll look at it. Yeah, but yeah, it's a great ability to use. But anyways, until next time, I'm Crazy Radiate. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Y'all have a